You never know where someone's been. You never know where they're going, and you never know where you're going to meet up with them again. So make a friend out of everyone. This is what my pops would say all the time to me. Well, maybe they just didn't have a bag. I was on my dog walk this morning, and Skyler stopped to do her business, and it was normal. I had Ziggy pulling on one arm and Skyler pulling on the other. I looked down, she was doing her business. I was waiting for her, and then I reached to the leash, and there was no more bags. I tell you, there's no greater angst than seeing your dog take a dump in somebody else's yard and not having a bag. The reason why is because today's modern day technology, there could be a Ring camera. That Ring camera could, snap a snapshot or even a video that could be posted on social media. And then people could, with no context at all, turn your name into the worst thing in the entire world. Well, in my head, as this was happening, the angst happens, and then in my brain, I'm committing, and I even said it out loud. Oh, I'm going to go get another bag, and on the way back, I'll come and take care of this. Well, I knew that, but what I was hoping is that the Ring camera or some other neighbor didn't see me do this and just walk away from the scene of the crime. And what it told me is, a lot of times I'm that onlooker. I'm the person that comes upon the random dog poop in the yard, and then I start judging the situation and judging the person that left it there, but I don't know the situation. I don't know the whole entire side of it. I don't take thought of the future. I don't have grace inside my heart. And it was incredible because as I sat down today in Proverbs 22, it talked about this exact thing, and it was saying that if we want a good name, prudence and grace are at the foundation of that. Prudence being the thought of the future, and grace meaning unwarranted favor. And not only should we, if we want a good name, give that to other people, but first of all, we've got to give it to ourselves. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Grace is probably the hardest thing that we'll ever give to ourselves. That's the hardest thing. It's easy to give to other people. Not so. Actually, when I say that, it's not so simple to give to other people, but it's a lot easier than giving it to ourselves. And when I was on that dog walk this morning, Skyler does her business. I look and I don't have a bag. It creates all the angst in the entire world. And when that happens, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to go back and pick this poop up. And I even said it out loud, so I seem like an even better person. And but the person probably that walks by and sees the dog poop in the lawn that I left, they don't know my mindset. They don't know the words that I said. They don't know my intentions. They don't know any of those things, so they could pass judgment. And I understand the passing of judgment because I've been on the other side. But then there's the side of not only the passing judgment on somebody else, but a lot of times we do this on ourselves. And this happened to me this morning. And not to say that I wasn't wrong, because I was wrong. I came downstairs and my son had a hoodie on, and he had his football jersey. He's been waiting so long to be able to do this. He's 13 years old. He's in 8th grade. His name is Maddox, and he's on Pop Warner playing tackle football for the first time. And they actually get to go to the Carlsbad high school game and run out on the field. And when they're doing this, he's been waiting for this moment. So he wears his jersey today. He comes down, he has this hoodie on, and it's the hottest days. This is the hottest week of our entire year in Carlsbad. Now, those of you in Las Vegas that are 108, 109, 115 degrees, when I say that it's going to be like 82 degrees, it's super hot here. And I told him, I said, why do you have a hoodie on? And then he's like, it's going to be fine. It's only going to be 79. I said, son, it is going to be hot, humid, all the stuff. And then he got a little attitude with me. And then I called him on his attitude. And then I was like, you need to, wear something else. He's like, I don't know what to wear. And he got upset. And then he went upstairs and changed the hoodie and he came down. But I could tell his swagger wasn't where his swagger needed to be. And I realized at that time that I had I had impressed on him the things that I thought were important as opposed to listening. I didn't have thought of the future. I didn't have grace with him. And I just, I just went at him hard. And I got home and I seriously got back from dropping him off from school and I just broke down. And what God was telling me in this is the same part of the, having Skyler and, she does her business in that neighbor's yard and I walk away. My intentions were to be able to come back, but a person could walk by, see that dog poop and literally judge me if they saw a picture of me, if they saw me do it, or they just could judge a person based off not knowing all the circumstances. And what God was saying is like the same type of grace that you want to give because you understand the intentions of the person or that you take thought of the future, the same grace, I want you to apply it to yourself because I just lost it this morning because I really feel that I ruined my son's Friday from telling him to take off the hoodie. And the hardest thing that we'll ever do is apply grace to ourselves. And so that's what I want to invite all of you to do today. And, Proverbs 22, it talks about it. It's all about, Proverbs 22 is all about a good name. And it says that a good name is worth more than anything that you could ever invest in. And but to have a good name, prudence and grace are mandatory in that situation. I had a guy named Cousin Barb, and he asked me, he said, what's the most valuable thing that you own right now? And I said, my house, my car, all these things, bank account, all these things. And he said, nope. The most valuable thing that you'll ever own is your name. But the challenge was at that time, I started to understand it. He reiterated it. But I didn't know how to build a good name. And in Proverbs 22, it actually runs you down and shows you exactly how to be able to do that. And so we're going to jump right in. And in verse 1, a good name is the most valuable thing that you'll ever own. Cousin Barb told me this, and he was a guy that started off washing windows. Then he started installing windows, and then he ended up managing the people who installed the windows. Then he owned the company who installed the windows, and then they expanded across the country and went all the way from Portland all the way to Maine, and every single McDonald's and other franchises, he was the one that installed the glass at that time. So Cousin Barb, when I was talking to him, was a guy who was a multi-millionaire. But he told me the most important thing and most valuable thing that I'd ever own is my name, because my name was something that people could trust. So as we're building this good name, remember prudence and grace are vital if you want to build one. And not only that prudence, thought of the future, but also the grace, you have to apply it to other people outside. But first of all, we got to apply it to ourselves. And so let's go. Verse 2 is wealth or poverty don't indicate a good name. And this was a hard one for me because growing up in Vandenberg Air Force Base in Lompoc, California, and then my parents splitting up when I was in 6th grade. And, we went into a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 people at one point, and then my dad moved back in. So it was like 5 people, a 1-bedroom apartment. What I used to think is like, man, for me to get a good name, I got to go out and make some money. I got to have wealth. I got to have this stuff. And what God was saying in verse 2 was poverty or wealth don't indicate a good name. There's good people with wealth. There's good people that are in poverty. There's bad people who have wealth and there's bad people who are in poverty. But neither of those, God was let me know that through that wisdom, neither one of them are an indicator of a good name. In verse 3-5, prudence and humility are not mandatory, but highly recommended. And when I say this, they're mandatory for a good name, but they're not mandatory in life. And it's not mandatory that you have a good name, but it's highly recommended that you have one. And this good name could be not only a personal side, when we talk about personal branding, yes, but the good thing about a personal branding is then when you build a business, then that business is based off of your name. And that business starts to get a good name in your company or in your community, in your arena, with your customers. This is an incredible thing, and it happens throughout the industry, whatever industry you're in. In verse 6, what starts out right ends up right. This is something that I heard from my mom all the time, and my mom was constantly shouting this at me. She was constantly saying what starts out right ends up right. And what I wrote from verse 6 is, don't be surprised by the results of faulty systems. 95% of challenges in organizations, in relationships, in friendships are not based off the people, it's the system. And the system is unemotional. And if we take the time to be able to look at the system, we can audit the system and we can make that system more efficient. And if the system is efficient, the results will be there. That's how you tell if the system is efficient. So look at this. Don't be surprised by the results of a faulty system, because most of the time we are mad at the results, but we don't look back at the process and what got us there in the first place. And when that happens, when we look at that, it makes life, well, it doesn't make it easy. It makes it more simple. In verse 7, and I wanted to read this too. Let me grab my glasses. I wanted to read this because I marked it in. It was important to me in verse 22. And what I would suggest is if you're not, read the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It'll be a large one. This was something that I learned in business. I had a partner, and she said that the one who has the money is the one that's in control. And I was like, man, that just sounds bad. But watch this. In verse 7, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender. And when I look at that, what it was stay out of debt. That's personally, professionally, spiritually, and financially. You don't want to be in debt in relationships. You don't want to be in debt in your business. You don't want to be in debt personally, any of those aspects. And when you take care of that debt, what happens is you take the monkey off your back. And when that monkey's off the back, then you don't have to feed it anymore. In verse 8, your seeds will always determine the crops. This is another one of the onboarding. I've talked about this before, but I tell you, in onboarding within a company, within an organization, so many people are surprised by the behavior of the people, but they don't take the time to look at their onboarding process and system, because most of the time, 99% of challenges in a company have to do with onboarding. And that onboarding has to do with communication, and communication is sender, receiver, results. And so if we are sending something and we're not getting the results, it's not the receiver's fault, it's the way in which we sent it. If you're speaking to someone, my pops would always say this to me, boy, if if a person speaks Spanish and I'm speaking Chinese to them, even if I say the right words, it doesn't land, so I won't get results. And your seeds will always determine your crops. Don't get surprised at the tree that produces apples if you planted an apple seed. Don't get mad at the tree for not producing oranges if you planted an apple seed. So look at the onboarding part, and especially whatever starts out right ends up right. And this is how we build a good name, not only personally, but also in our businesses. In verse 9, generosity builds a good name. Generosity of time, generosity of wealth, generosity wherever, but it has to be led, right? And so we want to be led by wisdom. What is wisdom? The right use of knowledge. And where do we get that? From the fear of God. But the fear of God is nothing more than the respect of God. The only way we can respect something is if we hear its words and we see its actions and they're in line. That creates respect. Well, that respect then is the beginning of wisdom, which is the right use of knowledge. That knowledge, or that wisdom now invites in knowledge. That knowledge brings understanding. The understanding brings insight. The insight brings discretion. The discretion will build the muscle of discernment. Discernment will create discipline. Discipline will create strength, and it'll lead you right back to the respect or the fear of God, whatever your God is, right? And so in verse 10 through 11, love with your whole heart and speak with grace. If you want a good name, love with your whole heart. Love with your whole heart and speak with grace. It means that you're not placing judgment on someone, but also make sure that we're applying this to ourselves. When I had this experience happen with my dog Skyler and the dog poop on the lawn, and I walk away from it, I looked at that scenario and I was like, okay, cool. I want to make sure that I have grace for other people, all these things. And I started to work on that. And then the situation happened with my son. And I flew off the handle this morning and told him not to wear the hoodie and all these things. And then I felt that I ruined his Friday. I get home, I break down in the driveway of my house. And what God is saying is that same thought of the future and grace, that same love that you have for other people, that same grace that I'm asking you to be able to speak with, I need you to speak to yourself with that. And that's the hardest thing that we'll ever do. In verse 12, wisdom and knowledge are products of spending time with God. Wisdom is the right use of knowledge, and knowledge comes after. There's no reason to get knowledge unless you have wisdom, and wisdom only comes from spending time with God. Now, in verse 13, laziness never wins. Laziness never wins. It doesn't mean that we just need to be busy. It just means that we need to be diligent. Diligent is right work. But laziness never wins. Laziness is not doing the right thing at the right time. It's not just being busy, because there's people who are in motion but not in action. Action leads you closer to your desired result. Motion just keeps you busy and also wears you out. In verse 14, what and who are you listening to? What is the music to your ears? I find that with myself, there's times when I want to listen to a specific thing. And what I see is when I listen to that, then it starts to drop down into my heart. Once it drops down into my heart and it fills up my heart, it starts to come out my mouth. Once it starts to come out my mouth, then my hands and my body starts to move towards it. So whatever I hear goes into my heart. Whatever my heart overflows comes out my mouth, and that creates the actions. So be conscious of who and what we're listening to, and especially the things that are music to our ears. In verse 15 and 16, discipline to do the right thing wins. It's a pretty simple one, right? And in verse 17 through 19 of Proverbs 22, which is the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, is seeking, listening, paying attention, and applying creates trust. If you want to trust something, you got to seek it out first. You got to listen to it. You got to pay attention to it. You got to apply what it is that you heard. And that'll create trust, because then you'll see results. But the question was, who and what are you seeking? Be conscious of this. And I get off track a lot of times, because I'll have the tendency to seek something, and then I start to listen to it. Then I start paying attention to it. I apply the things. And what it does is it creates trust in that scenario. But I've got to be conscious of that. And what God is just saying is just, I want to spend a little bit of time with you. That's it. So as we finish up today, watch this. This is the blueprint for a good name. If you want to build a good name, here it is. Seek wise counsel that gives you knowledge. Be honest, speak truth, do right business. Always give 2 to 3 times as much value as you charge. Keep great company, mind your business, work your land, honor God with your wealth, respect those who came before you, identify your gifts, and build your life around them. If we simply will take thought of the future, which is prudence, before we judge someone else's actions and extend grace in all situations, this will build a good name. But here's the caveat. Make sure to apply that to yourself first. So I hope you are having a phenomenal Friday. Give grace to yourself, give grace to others. Once you give grace to yourself and you have thought of the future, how big of a deal is this thing? Will it pass? I'm very fortunate because when I broke down today, when I got back from dropping Maddox off and I thought I ruined his day, I had a brother in James Dixon that spoke life into me. I called him and I was breaking down and I didn't even say a word to him. He just started praying and he started praying for me and lifting me up. And I want you to understand that having people around you that can lift you up and speak life into you is massive. And if you want that in your life, then be that for somebody else because somebody needs it today. I hope your Friday is phenomenal. I love you a bunch. Check out the book too. If you're watching on Instagram, you could grab that one. It's the Inchstones, The Vibe Within. If you're on the podcast, the Inchstones, The Vibe Within. It's the workbook that takes you through 3 months of the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.